Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about 10 mods that will transform your guitar. Better performance, better playability, and better tone. Here we go. Yes, welcome back to the channel. As I mentioned, today we are talking about guitar mods, how to enhance the performance of, entry-level or budget guitars and bring them up to the level of a professional instrument. So here we go. We're going to start on the headstock and talk about mods all the way through the guitar, all the way through the back, and yeah, basically talk about how to get better performance, better tone, better playability. Here we go. Let's jump in. Right, now when it comes to a guitar headstock, there's 3 areas I like to check to see if they might benefit from an upgrade. Number 1, and probably the most popular mod of all time, is to replace the guitar tuning machines. Especially on budget guitars, they're usually pretty poor and could use an upgrade. Now you can get upgrades, from $25 up, depending on what you want to do. This is a classic vibe, and these are quite nice tuning machines, but that doesn't mean you can't upgrade them. So they're vintage style, so you can see the square bodies with a screw in between each one. So yes, you can get locking tuners for this style of guitar. I'll show you an example here. So as you can see, very similar. They've got the square body with the screw in between, but they have the thumb wheel that shows we've got locking tuners. So these are Godos, but Hipshot, Graphtec, Fender, Schaller, there's so many great brands that make locking tuners. So that's definitely one area on a guitar I like to check. Now the next one is string trees. If you notice, maybe your guitar has 2 string trees, you might notice those strings that have them, you just run into tuning issues, or when you bend or use your trem, you can actually hear pinging, from the string trees. That's one of the easiest mods of all time. And the one I recommend is just simply Graphtec. There you go. You can see non-slip string tree, just goes straight in, whether you have 1 or 2. Easiest mod of all time. Sometimes I'll remove the second one depending on the guitar. Fender even made versions without string trees. I'll show you an example of that. So here's an official Fender guitar neck that was never drilled for string trees. It's got the roller nut there, and I put on some aftermarket tuners here as well. Now, part of the reason why you can get away without string trees on some guitars is if you order locking tuners, get the staggered height. So that means these 2 are taller, these 2 are middle height, and these 2 are super short. And that brings the proper tension of the string through the nut. And so you don't need that string tree, pulling it way down like that. So that's my recommendation. If you're going to order locking tuners, get the staggered height ones. They're really great. And if you don't want to, do that expense, something super cheap like these Graphtecs, well, they get the job done. Perfectly. Now the third area on the headstock is of course the guitar nut. This little piece of plastic is the cause of so many different tuning issues. Now most budget guitars do have plastic nuts. As you step up in price, you might get a Graphtec nut, you might get a bone nut, but most of the budget ones are plastic and they cause all sorts of problems. So the first thing won't cost you any money. Take a mechanical pencil, loosen your string off, pull it out of the nut, and then just put in some graphite on each one of the slots, and that will help the guitar string kind of slip through back and forth as you use the trem or as you bend, or sometimes just chording and stuff like that. So if you have a string that's holding up there and you can tell, oh, this string's always out of tune, make sure you put some graphite in there first. That's the first course of action. Doesn't cost you a thing. The second thing I like to do is use files. And if you have more than a couple guitars, say you have like an electric guitar and maybe an acoustic guitar, well, having some tools around is not a bad idea. So they're done by gauge. So if you have like a 9-46 or something like that, you get the file, you pull the strings out of the slot and you just kind of go back and forth. This will remove any burrs, any tight areas there where the string is catching. So just using a set of nut files, can solve your problem yourself. And like I said, if you have more than, a few guitars lying around, having some tools is definitely a good idea. All right, next, let's talk about the guitar neck. There's a couple mods here I really love to do. Now, hopefully, as you guys can see, I'll just catch them in the light here. The fingerboards on both of these models are very, very high gloss. They're very reflective, very shiny. But when I turn the guitars $20 over. Hopefully you can see the Strat here is still very, very shiny. It's got a very high gloss neck, but the Tele doesn't. And there's a reason for that. And this mod is definitely not for everybody, but it's something to consider. If you like everything about your guitar, but your hand just kind of gets a little sticky on that high gloss, well, just remove it. So I did a video on this. I removed the guitar neck, took some sandpaper, and just took the high gloss sheen off this neck and turned it into a satin. And man, what a difference that makes. Here's my signature model from Paletti. I'll just grab that. I also did it on this. So this is, yeah, super high-end guitar. And I know not everybody likes, you know, that satin, but just removing, you know, the super gloss off the back of a neck, for me anyway, makes a massive difference. So whether or not you want to do it, kind of up to you, but I think if you love everything about your guitar, but it's just too high gloss, I would recommend doing this. Now, obviously, if you have a painted neck, like a PRS or a Gibson or something like that with mahogany underneath, it's going to be a completely different story. But for something like this on a project guitar or a budget guitar, I would definitely consider doing it. Super easy, 4 bolts. Take your strings off, pull the neck off, sand it down, put it back on, and you're done. Now moving on to the guitar body, the next thing I like to check out to see if I might want to mod it is, of course, the guitar pickups. Now next to adding locking tuners, replacing the pickups is probably the next most popular mod. It's the voice of the guitar, and you can drastically change how your instrument sounds. You can go from ultra vintage to ultra modern, or back and forth, or somewhere in between. Bluesy, metal, anything you can think of. The aftermarket support is phenomenal. Now, one of the cheapest mods I like to do on, say, like a really entry-level Pacifica or a Squire Bullet or something like that is to replace the ceramic-based pickups with Alnico pickups. And that can be as cheap as, you know, $20 to $30 eBay pickups I've used, and it completely changes the voice of that guitar. Ceramic-based pickups are very warm as single coils, and so if you want to go from a bigger, fatter, warm sound to like a traditional kind of vintage Fender chimey tone, we'll just throw in a cheap set of Alnico pickups, 20, 30 bucks, you're done. So that's one of my favorite mods to do on like an entry-level guitar. But the support for instruments, like here's that Vola, you can put a humbucker sized single coil there. You see those rail pickups. That gives a big humbuckery type tone out of a single coil pickup. Same thing here. There's sort of a T-style rail pickup. So, I mean, popping one in a Strat or a Tele or something like that will completely change the voice of that guitar and give you, you know, especially if you want to play, you know, those creamy lead tones or some aggressive rhythm with lots of distortion. Adding something like a rail pickup, almost no mods to your guitar. They drop right in, completely change it. So that's definitely one area that I'd like to check on guitars. Play around on it, and if you like the playability, but you're not completely sold on the tone, well, try swapping in a set of pickups, transform your guitar. Now, staying on the guitar body, another thing I like to do is change the pickguard. It's purely cosmetic, doesn't enhance the performance, the playability, the tone, anything like that, but it does change the look of your guitar. So if your guitar has a pickguard, going from a white guard to a black guard, or going to a pearloid guard or a clear guard, or, you know, some sort of fancy engraving on the guard. Even guys will make like leather pick guards and put them on their old Teles and stuff like that. Completely changes the visual look of your guitar. It's cheap, it's affordable, it's easy to do. Like I said, it's purely aesthetic, but I love to do it. Next up is more of a serious mod, pots, switches, and output jack. These are things that happen inside the guitar, so you don't, you know, get that visual flair, but it's just nice to know that you've gotten rid of all those cheap dime-sized pots, those scratchy feeling pots, the plastic switches, all those kind of things, and replace them with something new. Now, this can be really intimidating as a new guitarist, or if you're not used to modding. That's why I've always used like the Obsidian wire switches. It's completely drop-in. So this is obviously a Strat model with volumes and tones, serious switch, and it's all solderless. So really, really nice. You pay a little bit of extra money, obviously pot switches and output jacks and a little bit of wire, soldering, that kind of stuff. It doesn't cost a lot of money when you break down the parts, but for the ease of use, you throw this in your cheap guitar and you suddenly have ultra high-end parts, and everything just, yeah, goes into this little quick connect system, So yeah, so handy. So that's why I always use. Yeah, makes the swapping super easy. Now the next area of a guitar I like to look at closely to see if it might need upgrading is guitar saddles and trem systems. Now when we talk about saddles, trims, and the nut, these are the culprits for tuning instability. So if you're pulling your hair out and you're like, my guitar doesn't keep tune, well, look at the areas of the nut I already looked at and the trem system, or if it's a fixed bridge, replacing the saddles. So Graphtec makes a bunch of options. This one here is Tusk. So there's all sorts of different kinds of like saddles you can add, all sorts of different materials that will be a little bit more slippy, I guess. It'll allow the string to move back and forth without getting caught up on hard metal. So there's all sorts of options. Here's a stop tailpiece option. This was a project guitar we did together on the channel, which is probably why it doesn't look quite as nice as the other guitars, but it was a lot of fun. I love doing kits, projects, and mods. So here you can see the saddles. Check them out. They're black Graphtec saddle. So it doesn't matter if it's a stop tailpiece kind of guitar, you can still upgrade the saddles. And on like a Les Paul, or this is like a PRS kind of style guitar, this breakover angle here, it can cause just as many tuning issues as the nut. So be aware if your guitar is holding up and you're like, I changed everything on the nut, or I added graphite, all that kind of stuff, my guitar still doesn't hold tune, try adding some better saddles here, especially on, yeah, like kit guitars or lower end guitars. Now, if you have a guitar with a Bigsby, well, they make roller saddles. Check that out. Very cool. So each one of those saddles is a roller. And again, it just removes a sticking point where that string can hang up, where there's that metal on metal contact. So yeah, if you don't want to change your whole trem system, or if you have a guitar with like a Bigsby or fixed bridge, well, there's still options for saddles. And finally, another really affordable mod is to upgrade your strap buttons. It's something small, but makes a big difference. I never understand manufacturers that make these beautiful guitars and then put the tiniest strap buttons on them. You put your strap on there and you're like, this is not safe. I do not feel good about this. And you can use strap locks, which is a great mod as well. I tend not to like them if they kind of like make noise or add friction to your strap. I just like the feel of a traditional strap and buttons. So getting an oversized set of buttons for your guitar makes a huge difference. Again, it's really affordable, and I don't like manufacturers that put tiny ones on. Here we've got a set of giant, it's hard to tell, but very, very secure giant buttons on this guitar. Yeah, it's an affordable mod, easy to do, and if you're like me who just likes to hang a strap on a guitar, get the biggest, widest buttons you can, and it'll just feel super secure. So there you go, another affordable mod. Now, most entry-level and mid-range guitars are kind of the smattering between great parts and not so great parts. So being able to, you know, identify those parts and use mods to kind of bring that guitar up to the next level is really important. It's fun to do, and yeah, it can increase your enjoyment of playing guitar, which is really important. So hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, be sure to subscribe to the channel. If I missed any common mods, well, drop them in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you guys. Other than that, have yourself a great day. Take care.